are back. You're listening to You Would Think, the Philadelphia Flyers podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Collington, and joining me, as always, Kevin Durso. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing well, better than last week. Unfortunately, we took a pause unscheduled.
Yep, we did end up taking a week off last week. As mentioned here, Kevin wasn't feeling too good, but we're back. We're ready to go. We're close enough to 100% to get a show out. So,
yeah, I mean, like in all things, I took the show off. I didn't go to Thursday's home game because it was just still lingering too much, and then I was back at it on Saturday afternoon. So,
well, we're glad you're feeling better.
By that logic, if I was back at it on Saturday afternoon to cover the game, I should be back here on Sunday night too.
Absolutely.
So I think I'm in good shape.
Absolutely.
And the voice sounds a lot better than it did a week ago, so that helps.
All right, and the good news is we actually have some solid hockey to talk about. The Flyers have started the season above 500. We sit here through 8 games. Flyers are sitting at 4-3-1. We're going to break this down in just a second. Before we do, hit the social media at YWT Podcast. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Kevin's at Kevin_Durso. All right, 4-3-1.
And
so
generalizing this, by the way,
we're not going to go all the way back here.
Well, no. I'm saying through October, they have one more game in October. Technically, they'll play Monday night against Carolina to wrap up the October schedule. But this is close enough to the entire month that we kind of have a month worth of stuff to talk about, which is good. Yeah,
we took 2 weeks off, and we come back with 8 games to talk about, basically. So, pretty.
We got the first 2 in on the last show, so we can kind of.
Yeah, but I'm sure we'll talk about it as a whole. So,
there's similarities to a couple of them, sure.
Right,
that'll bring them back.
But as we get going here, the first game of the series, well, and by the series I mean since our last show, is the loss to Ottawa. I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry.
Home opener.
You're right.
Home opener was where we
Home opener, Vancouver. What a performance out of Carter Hart, eh?
Sure. That was a big part of it. Believe it or not, like it wasn't the same kind of. And I'm going back to check everything because it was a 26 save shutout, which is obviously that's good. They outshot.
Not going to turn
Vancouver.
it down.
Well, no, they outshot Vancouver 42-26 though. So this was kind of along the lines of the Columbus game, that kind of overall dominant effort in terms of. They just did a lot of things really well in this game, and it was obviously entertaining. Before we even get to the actual game itself, because we kind of led into this a little bit, because talk about a madhouse that the sports complex was that night. Apparently these are kind of semi-unconfirmed numbers, but like sort of confirmed at the same time. Obviously, something along the lines of 125,000 people in the sports complex at one time, which was.
That's a lot of people.
That's And this is what happens when you have 3 events going on at roughly one time, for one. And then something about how this was the first time ever that every parking spot in the sports complex was taken.
Huh.
Now,
I did not hear that one. That's fun.
So that was supposedly the other side of this, which, so there were some... I lucked out. I will tell you this right now, in the sense that, first of all, the Flyers game started 2 hours before anything else did.
Which was done on purpose.
Right. They did move it up. And so getting down there wasn't fun. It took me an hour and a half to make a drive that should take 45 minutes to an hour.
Yep.
So it wasn't fun. But getting in there was not the worst thing in the world. Once I got where I was going, I'm in, I go inside. Did I cut it close? Sure, I did. For the home opener, I wouldn't like to be probably this close to puck drop, but I was there about 45 minutes before, or I guess to go a little bit more technical with it, 10, 15 minutes before warm-ups, and it's like,
right,
you're really close to when everything picks up, and before when warm-ups hit,
you don't have a whole lot of time to settle down. Right.
Well, warm-ups hit, you blink, and next thing you know, it's, oh, by the way, we're about to start the game.
Right.
Collectively, like the warm-ups are over, they've sweep the ice. Everything's ready to go. Here comes the light show, and then we're on to the game. You know what I mean? And it's the home opener, so there's bigger things than that. It's festivities. They're going to introduce the whole team. You name it. And so the game progresses, and everything about the game is going swimmingly at that. Like as it goes through, they got through 2 periods. The third period was about to start at 8:00, pretty much right on the dot. So you're looking at the fact that we're 2/3 of the way through this game, and nothing else has started yet in the complex. Nothing.
Things are looking good.
Things are looking good. Post game, by the way, there's nothing better than a 2-0 win where you go, hey, let's talk about this. Egor Zamula scored his first NHL goal. Sean Couturier scored his first goal since his return. And Carter Hart had a 26 save shutout. Who did we talk to after the game? Zamula, Couturier, Carter Hart.
Done.
Over to Torts and done.
Let's go watch the Phillies.
Well, and here's the thing. Now I've heard a lot of horror stories after the fact that once people trying to leave the Flyers game, when like fan wise, when they were trying to leave, there were still people coming in for the other two. So it was like a one lane in, one lane out kind of situation for a while. There was horror stories about people who were still stuck trying to get in and out an hour and a half beyond that potentially. I don't know how it worked out for me. I got out of the lot that I was in, which now granted, yes, little privilege moment here. I'm in a media lot, which is like a little bit less packed than every, I don't think they're counting that lot towards the every space was filled kind of thing. It's a reserved lot. I get it. But I go out the gate and go basically hang a left and down the street, and I'm already exiting the one gate. Hang another left. I shoot straight down. I was on 95 in 5 minutes somehow. I left when the Phillies game was in the bottom of, I think it was between I was walking out of the building between the fifth and the top of the fifth and the bottom of the fifth inning, right in the middle of the fifth inning.
Okay.
I arrived home. And again, I'm like, even with no traffic coming home, it's 40 minutes probably.
Bottom of the seventh.
Top of the seventh.
Top of the seventh. Okay.
Because the bottom of the sixth ran long. It was a 4-run inning, and it ran long. And believe me, once this particular Phillies game was over, that was pretty much the highlight of the series at that point. We don't need to lament on
We're not talking about that.
I know. But I was just like, man, did I get lucky in the sense that it took me 5 minutes to get on 95 and get out of there and I was on my way home. And I was able to be home by 10, or 10:30 or something like that. And it was like, not bad. I'll take that every single time. But like in all seriousness, and it was an interesting game too, because like for all the shots that I just mentioned that the Flyers had 42 total, they scored just under 2 minutes into the game and then scored with just under 3 minutes left to play in the period. So it's like, and then that was it. There was no more scoring for the rest of the game. Like, actually, believe it or not, like you're talking about Carter Hart's performance. Thatcher Demko in that game was stealing it for.
Man,
they had
playing.
They had probably 5 or 6 goals realistically, and they only scored 2 because Demko was so good.
It should have been 6 or 7, nothing easy. Yeah.
And look, let's credit on the 2 goals that they did score, because first of all, Zamula made a really nice play. Back into the lineup, by the way, because we had talked about the in and out the first time around. Back into the lineup and used some patience, kind of worked it around a defender who slid through his shot lane. So he pulled it back and then let it go through a screen, scores, great celebration. He was really excited about that one, obviously. I mean, of course it is. It's always cool. It's not the first
guy getting his first goal. Yeah.
And it's not the first. Oh, look, it's not the first occurrence we're going to talk about something like this happening in this show. We'll have another one of these to get to in a little while. But a first NHL goal is always cool, Yeah. So it was a cool moment,
Yeah, it was definitely awesome to see, and you get your classic scene: the guys mob them, somebody grabs the puck, et cetera, et cetera. Guy's first goal is always fun.
Yep.
And the other goal, not really first, but first back. It was nice seeing Sean Couturier pop one.
It was a big deal. It's a big deal when he scored, and the goal itself, by the way, because it was Oof. He Sean Couturier pulled out the old Marty St. Louis move.
Yep.
And started moving backwards a little bit on Demko, and then pulled it back and scored.
Nasty.
It was
nasty.
It was very impressive, and he certainly long time coming for him.
He's back.
Well, and he turned around. He actually kind of alluded to this after that particular game was over, because he talked about, to an extent, nearly 2 years having since played a game period. He goes, how kind of like in a way of saying, how lucky am I? First assist is a 2-on-0 breakaway. The first goal is a penalty shot. Like what's the luck that I have to be put in a situation where it's not, it was like, we're going to get to another goal that Couturier scored this season later in the show when we get to the next handful of games that are coming up and stuff like that. Much more kind of the goal you expect to see Sean Couturier score than worrying about, like, hey, on a penalty shot. You know what I mean? Like,
right. So, absolutely.
Like I think he's just thinking, like, what did I do to put myself in that situation where it's those 2 situations, a 2-on-0 for the assist and a penalty shot, which is, essentially, the breakaway with nobody else out there. Very, very premeditated. They've also, by the way, everybody said he's worked on that move in practice. So,
of course.
Because Carter Hart said he's seen it a few times. So
see, but I would think, though, if you haven't scored in 22 months, having the whistle and the call and the break and 10 to 15 seconds to think about it. For a lot of players, it's your third game back.
Right.
You haven't scored in almost 2 years. For a lot of guys, that gets in your head. And it was nice. It was nice seeing him not only take a good shot, obviously, but being confident enough to pull off a move like that. Because I mean, you don't just come in and start skating backwards unless you're extremely comfortable with where you're at. So it is nice seeing Sean Couturier. I'm willing to say that he is pretty much back to where he should be, where he was, however you want to phrase that.
I mean, there's still things. Look, to me, there's still things to work on. Now, I'm watching it from a way more probably technical standpoint than you are.
Fair.
And not to try to jump too many spots here, but basically going to the very last, most recent game we can go off of.
Yeah.
He took. Now, ultimately, he ended up. It was a puck off the side of his head, kind of, and that's what was creating the pain and kind of whatever it was. But when it happened, a lot of things looked awkward. His legs kind of buckled in a weird way. He was dangling his shoulder going off the ice, and everybody, immediately you're thinking, oh, great, watch that, whatever. So certainly, I think there's still going to be there should be at least.
Fair.
I'm not saying it from a coaching staff standpoint per se, because they're already this is already not the case with them. But you kind of should have a little bit of a white gloves approach with him, just a little bit, in terms. And I guess I say that more in terms of expectations than I do usage. They, if you want to jump from this game to the very next home game they played against Edmonton, where quite literally Tortorella said after the game, he wanted every shift against McDavid. And they kept McDavid in check, except for one time when he wasn't on the ice because they were trying to get their lines back in order following a penalty kill.
Right.
And that's the one time that the McDavid line got to them in any way. But think about that. He's 4 games back going against the guy who's fastest in the league, most skilled in the league, puts up the most points in the league.
The guy, right?
The guy. And stayed with him the whole game, wanted it the whole game like that, and
for the most part kept up with pretty much entirely kept up with him.
Yes. Well, and then imagine
what else do you want?
Imagine what happens to everybody else behind him as a result of that. The way that Noah Cates is able to defend, because it's not you're on McDavid and you're from one game to the next. Go from one game to the next in this particular situation. You're not going from, hey, tonight you're on Elias Pettersson. In the next game you're on Connor McDavid. The next game you're on, the Robertson Hintz line. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. You're not going from one to the next elite. You're going to, a little bit of a tier below, which is a good thing, which can be a good thing anyway. For a guy like Noah Cates, anyway.
Are you saying that not every team has a line like Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl?
Well, no, I'm saying I'm doing the opposite. I'm saying that they've kind of played a lot of teams in a row
That's fair.
Do possess.
That's fair.
A really solid top line, or at least top line center that you're trying to compete against. And I think there's a difference between the way that they and they had no choice, but the way that they threw Noah Cates into the fire last year.
Yeah, Noah Cates,
him behind somebody like Couturier.
Noah Cates might mess around and get himself in the Selke conversation within the next 5 years or so.
He already did a little bit.
Yeah. And obviously Sean Couturier is going to get a lot of the Selke buzz on this team just because he has won it before and he is, that defensive center and et cetera. But the attention that Sean Couturier draws will also get Noah Cates some attention as well in that category, and people will recognize how excellent defensively he is as well.
Yeah, I think so for sure. And well, actually, the bigger deal with Noah Cates is how much more does the offensive upside start to show up. He was already generating conversation on the defensive play alone,
right?
And had a modest rookie season for offensive production, but.
Does that remind you of anybody?
Well, yeah, I know. I mean, it's exactly the same path. They're kind of they're not cut from the same cloth and style at all, but they're
following a similar
progression that is similar. Yeah, absolutely. And and look, it's going to lead to, that's a good look. It's a good kind of. I don't want to jump too much from some of the results that got us to this point in the month of October.
Sure.
But one of our later talking points in the show has a lot to do with another member of that center group that isn't getting an opportunity right now and kind of the differences between, like kind of the why of this. And it's, and
Well,
to be fair, there's probably not really a good reason completely, because it's kind of going against a lot of.
Well, we can touch on it here because a lot of this conversation did start sparking up after 3 or 4 games. And that is, what you're alluding to is the fact that Morgan Frost. Yeah. Catch us up on the Morgan Frost situation.
So basically, the game that we are actually referring to, the home opener we're talking about, Morgan Frost was held out of the lineup. He was a healthy scratch for this game. And there was a lot of discussion about that topic. And, I guess there wasn't, I don't want to say there was a lot of it after in light of that game in particular, because the team played bad in Ottawa. Let's be real about that.
They did.
They played bad in Ottawa. It was a bad game, team-wide, whatever. And you had 2 young players that have made the roster out of camp, Tyson Foerster and Bobby Brink, and they had split the 2 games to start with.
Right.
And so, Brink needed to get back in the lineup. But I'm like, truthfully, I think that what Tortorella looked at from that game in general was Foerster should be able to play also. And
sure.
And the conversation that came into this kind of decision was
who comes out then?
Well, not just who comes out, but with Morgan Frost, because the natural thing to do, if you wanted to follow the book, by the book of what was said in training camp, which was about being able to play the kids and it being a land of opportunity and all that type of stuff, then the answer was Nick Delorier, you're out of the lineup. Garnet Hathaway, you're out of the lineup. One
Fair
of those
enough.
guys, right?
Yep.
Somebody who doesn't factor into the long-term future of this whole operation that you're going through, this process.
Right.
But, and there's a level of this where I agree, by the way, that's your 4th line. They have a role. They also have a certain set amount of minutes that they typically get. You don't want to necessarily have Morgan Frost play just so he gets the 8 minutes that they do and plays in a role that's not suited for him at all. That doesn't show off the playmaking or allows him to try to be creative and make plays and maybe score or whatever.
Right.
You want him to be in a creative role. You want him to be in preferably a top 6 role. At worst, 3rd line. But even then, are you telling him to go out and be a checker? That's not what you want to do either.
No.
But at the same time, I don't think that's like, there's an element where I sit there and I go, at some point in time, you draw the line on that if you're John Tortorella to an extent. Or not that you do, like, if you're him, but like, to me, that's where you have to draw a line, because John Tortorella's thinking is too much of the old school in that spot where how many 3rd lines are checking lines anymore? It's not made that way anymore. Your 4th line is pretty much the grinder line, and it's strictly only because of the fact that you have, out of the whole game itself, you typically have 7-8 minutes of time to work with, and that I understand not wanting to not wanting to put Frost in that situation. But what's the difference between Frost and Scott Lawton?
Right.
What's the difference? Like, let them play the role, because on your 3rd line, you're still out there trying to create. Let's remember for a second too that currently that 3rd line, if you will, is Lawton centering Travis Konechny and Tyson Foerster. What's the difference?
It's a pretty good line.
You got 2 guys who are supposed to be able to score goals, though, and Lawton's the leadership 2-way guy, and that's fine. I'm not saying anything wrong with that.
There's a room in every spot for that. Yeah.
But every roster out there, you think every roster out there is going, our 3rd line's a checking line, so we don't want to put a guy who scores into the 3rd line. No, it's about depth anymore, and you've got to get over the fact that you think it's a checking role, and that's what they got to do to be the most effective and things like that. Like,
well, and think about
me in that respect.
Well, and think about the guys you mentioned in terms of guys who should be coming out if we're looking based on merit. You mentioned Hathaway and Delorier, guys who Hathaway can, contribute offensively, etc., but he's typically there to provide a little bit of edge. And same with Delorier, obviously, with quite frankly less scoring talent than Hathaway. But those guys are not on. There's not room for that in an NHL lineup anymore, right? In 1997, there were 6 spots, or 5 or 6 spots that those guys would take. And as the years have gone on, those numbers have gotten smaller and smaller, and now there's room for between 0 and 2 of those guys, and for most teams, it's 1 at the most.
I partially disagree with what you're saying, because it's not that there's not room for guys like that. It's that it's less about, like, Delorier's had a couple fights in the last handful of games. And I get that fires everybody up and that's great and things like that. if you want to talk about Delorier or Hathaway, or Nick Sealer's done this too, so I'll lump him in, even though he's not a forward. I'm just
sure. Well, sometimes he's a forward.
But that's true. People who have seen a guy take a hit and then go, I'll be the guy, and they come in and they serve as bodyguard.
That's fair.
Yes, there's a role for that still, because you do want to protect your star players. If somebody sees Tyson Foerster go down and comes over and goes, I'll take care of this, then yes, you're appreciative of that.
That's fair.
And it's happened a couple of times, and that's what their role is. What I think people have a problem with, and this is exactly what I said, is, and this is kind of the way that I feel, like, kind of the way I feel is, well, and for what it's worth, by the way, to this point, Frost hasn't played a game since the second game of the season. There's 8
he has
games,
been healthy scratched in
6 games in a row, and the problem is this only fuels the argument even further. But you take that line that we are talking about and you go, okay, listen, yes, are they willing to be, are they able to be protectors, and do they have a specific role? Sure, they do. I get that. The line has contributed nothing offensively. They are all 0 points.
If you want to get Morgan Frost in the lineup, that's a pretty easy spot to do it, even just to get him some ice time.
But they love their preseason, and they love the chemistry of the trio that's out there and things like that. The big problem was, look, this changed a little bit defensively because one of these types of players is out of the lineup now also. So which we should mention as well. But what I want to get at is take Morgan Frost's name out of this discussion.
Okay.
Don't address it as Morgan Frost is being held out of the lineup. Let's address it like it is the other way. In the first 4 games of the season that you played, just the first 4, when this was kind of becoming a thing.
Right.
You've scratched 2 kids in alternating games,
which is fair enough.
Well, fair, but you've scratched 2 kids who are 22 years old. In alternating games to get each other into the lineup. You've scratched your 23-year-old defenseman. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm sorry. Well, you had a 21-year-old defenseman and a 23-year-old defenseman that were doing the same thing, and you alternated the 2 of them as well. And now you were scratching your 24-year-old center.
Right. Who was a first-round pick.
All while, by the way, at that time, the 5 or 6 players, I believe it's 6, that are age 30 and over, have played every single game to that point. And you're going, what happened to play the kids? What happened to land of opportunity? This isn't land of opportunity. Why is it the decision-making process being like, and this, where this was really a big argument too, or where I think this was a big argument, was from the Vancouver game to the Edmonton game. We just talked about Egor Zamula had a nice game against Vancouver. The whole team pitches a shutout defensively, by the way, and he scores his first NHL goal. And he's scratched against the Edmonton Oilers because you want to get Emil Andrae into the game.
Well,
what about Nick Sealer? What about Mark Stahl? Why did they have to dress in each of the first 4 games? And you have 2 guys playing well.
And I'll say this for John Tortorella. I'm going to defend John Tortorella for half a second, and then I'll criticize him in the second half. Don't worry. John Tortorella is a competitive person.
Sure.
And a competitive coach. And after 4 games, you're 3-1. After 5 games, you're 4-1. I understand wanting to keep things together while it's working, right? Especially in this early season, John Tortorella knows how important it is to get off to a good start. And when you start 4-1, no matter what your lineup looks like, I want my coach, the person who's in my locker room talking to my team every day, when you're 4-1, I want him thinking Stanley Cup. I know the roster isn't built for that. I know the roster is built to be bad and then be further dismantled and be worse. Like, I know that. But when you're 4-1, I want my coach thinking Stanley Cup. Now, since then, you've lost 3 of 4, and you lose all that ground with me and make a change, John. But
after the last one, I think they will, by the way.
I hope so. But through 5 games, I'm willing to defend Torts on pretty much all of his lineup decisions, because we've talked about it a lot on this show. From Danny Briere up, the idea is be as bad as possible. But from John Tortorella down, it has to be about winning. To some extent. You know what I mean.
Yes, I hear what you're saying. So this is where I have a problem with this. And it's because of the fact that then honestly, just say that from day one. Like, honestly, if you're the coach and that's the way you think, and we're going to be competitive and we're going to try to win as many games.
So you don't think he should have said, we're going to play the kids? Is that what you're kind of getting at?
Said it was a land of opportunity, and that you're thinking big picture with everybody's development, and then basically,
bench Morgan Frost for 2 weeks.
It has nothing. Again, to me, it's not like take Frost out of it because
fair.
I feel that way about Zamula. Like
fair.
What message are you sending to a 23-year-old defenseman who just scored his first NHL goal and then the next game sits because Andrae didn't get to play the game before?
That's fair.
It literally took. Again, he comes out day one, first day of camp. Mark, I know what kind of game Mark Stahl's going to bring, but I've told him we're not going to be able to play him every single game because it's about developing the kids. Well, how are you developing the kids if you play him every single game?
I was say he's played all 8, hasn't he?
No, he got hurt.
I'm sorry. Right.
So yeah. Hey, guess what? After the 4th one, now you had to play somebody else instead of Mark Stahl. But I want to see you bench that guy. And they even have a freaking clip of him in this. They've done this video series on YouTube. They even have a freaking clip in a preseason game looking over at one of his assistants, probably Brad Shaw, who does the defenseman, and saying, I don't know how I'm supposed to sit him. So you already know what you're getting with him. It's that category of being one of Torts' guys, right? And it becomes very clicky, and it becomes one of these things where next thing you know, you've got a player like Morgan Frost. And I'm not saying that Frost is going to be the greatest thing, and I'm not saying he's earned anything yet. Well, he hasn't earned it with the inconsistencies of his playing, of his playing career to this point. But you're essentially you're running the risk of running him out of town because at what point in time does somebody like that sit there and go, I can't play for this. I can't play for this guy. He doesn't like me and he won't put me in the lineup. And I don't know what else I'm supposed to do.
And I really do think there's a chance that Morgan Frost ends up getting traded. But at a certain point, when it comes to Stahl, for instance,
right.
At a certain point, it's up to Danny Briere to take his toys away from him.
Here's another way I'll take it too. Okay, because they sent down Emil Andrae not too long ago, and I agree with that decision.
Fair enough.
Because of the fact that did it look overwhelming to him? Yes,
a little bit. Yeah,
he didn't play near it. Like he didn't play as many great games as he did poor ones.
You saw some flashes. He looked good at times, but yeah, he definitely needs a little bit of a break here.
Exactly, that's fine. So he explains how. Because, they can send him down. He can get top pair minutes in the minors, all that type of stuff. Yes. We
run the first power play, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
But in the next breath, because it's brought up, now that you're down to with Stahl out, and we're going to get to Rasmus Ristolainen in a second, who hasn't played yet too. With those two guys out, you have room for you have 6 healthy defensemen.
Yep. So Ryan Ellis will come back any day now.
Well, no. So the point, I hear you. But so the point is, does that mean Zamula's basically an everyday player now that he's going to play, right? And whatever. And Tortorella said he's in the same boat as Andrae. That they'll do what's best for his development or whatever. And it's at this point in time that I sit there and I go, you can't. And Danny Briere better get it into John Tortorella's mind that you can't do this because you know how you get Egor Zamula to the minors? Waivers.
Yeah.
So you run the risk of losing him for nothing. So if you like him as a part of your future, you have to learn to let him develop on the fly now. You're past that point. He's not Emil Andrae who has options to go back to the minors.
He's pretty stuck on your roster. You better get him some ice time.
Right. Yep. So you have to play him. So don't hit me with the line, well, he's in the same boat. No, he's not in the same boat. And Morgan Frost is not either. It's not like because he's sitting, you can go, Morgan Frost, I want to get you to the minors. Somebody will claim him. And if you want him to be part of this team, then you have to figure it out. Like, in all seriousness, I haven't seen enough of Tyson Foerster this year to not warrant necessarily sending him down right now. Brink is out playing Foerster. So if that were the case...
he absolutely is.
So if that were the case, what's the easy thing to do to improve the development of all 3 players involved in that triangle?
Send him down.
Send Foerster down. Brink gets to keep playing up there until something changes, and he may need the time down in the minors or whatever the case may be, or until an injury allows you to have Foerster back up. But Frost can't go anywhere. He has to be at this level. So you can either find a way to get him into the lineup or keep benching him, and eventually he's going to get traded, and you lose a player who's in his mid-20s because you're stubborn about keeping the 4th line together or not putting him in a checking role or whatever the hell you want to do with it. And that's the problem I have. It's not like, again, I'm not here to make it a defensive play Morgan Frost because I think Morgan Frost is the answer to some of their problems. It's just, how do you go about trying to develop everyone the best way? And right now you're holding one guy overly accountable by not playing him, despite the fact that other guys could all fall into a similar category. Think about something for a second. Go look at, and this is a big thing about because we're talking about, look at their start. Look at the way, the record and all that stuff like that. Who's scoring the goals? Who's producing the offense right now? And go look at the names and recognize that it's kind of exactly the same thing as last year.
Yep. It's your established players.
Right. And even more to my point on it is go look at it doesn't even have to be goal totals. Like right now, goal totals, it's pretty easy, right? Like Travis Konechny's got 8 freaking goals so far this year.
He's playing well. I will give Travis Konechny a lot of credit.
He's got 8 goals. Now he's a unique kind of person in this because Travis Konechny's right on that edge, right? He's right on that line between do you stay for the whole thing and you come out on the other side and you're a star on this team,
or do you cash him out now while you get the most value out of him?
Yes, correct.
I know.
Like what's the bigger cash out? But how about this? How about Cam Atkinson with 5 goals on the season already? Is Cam Atkinson part of your long-term future?
Nope.
No. So he's the reason why you're having success. It's not like it's somebody who's your future doing it. It's nice to see that, Joel Farabee with 4 goals. That's a nice thing because Joel Farabee is definitely on the other side of the rebuild process. He's part of the growth potential here.
Looking at your points leaders, Travis Sanheim, he's locked up long term. Sean Couturier, he's locked up long term. These are parts of your future.
Well, right, and Couturier's different because of the contract, and Sanheim is definitely. Sanheim also kind of falls into that category age-wise, where it's a little different. But the contract's really a challenge to move. And listen, if Sanheim can embrace everything. Now, the problem with Sanheim is he still makes a bunch of really awful mistakes and turnovers from his own end. But if he can be a production level guy, and I'd have to go, I don't have it off the top of my head. I'd have to really go back and look. But I want to know when he got to 8 points last season because it was a while. It was a long time. What does he have?
He was atrocious to start last season.
He has what? One goal and 7 assists to get to the 8 points this year, I believe is what it is.
Let me see.
And he has 1 goal. I just want to go and look last year at his game log.
Okay.
And I just want to.
He has 1 goal. Yeah.
Okay. So I just want to look because, first of all, by the way, let's just even do this without even having to look at his game log. Last season, how many goals and how many points did he have? I'll let you know he played 81 games last year. How many goals and how many points did he have last year? To compare to the fact that he's got 1 and 8 already this year.
9 goals, 25 points.
So you nailed the assist number. Take 2 goals away, and you're right. So
okay, listen.
7 goals, 23 points.
For pulling that out of absolutely nowhere, I feel pretty okay about that.
But now think about this. They've played 8 games. He's already a third of the way to his point total from a year ago.
Okay, so I'm looking.
Whether that is increased ice time, increased role, increased whatever, it's still really impressive. Now I'm looking at his game log from last year. Okay, I have it up here. Okay. I just pulled it myself, so I do know. Okay, so
he got his first point in game number 10.
See,
his second point in game number 12. It took a long time.
It took him 18 games to score a goal. By that point, he had a 2-point game that game, which was that was his 4th point. 5th came in game 20, 6th in game 21.
His 8th point was November 29th.
No, I'm sorry. His 8th point was November.
His 8th point was November 29th against the New York Islanders. So he has gotten that.
Is that right?
A month early.
No, hold on. That's not right.
Did I count that wrong?
Yeah, the 8th one was it's the next one. It was against Tampa on December 1st.
Okay, December 1st. So it was the more than a month, more than a month early.
Not even more than a month early. Let's go off of this one. It was the 24th game of the season. That means the season was a quarter of the way through. More than a quarter of the way through by that point. And that's what it took for him to get 8 points last year. He's at 8 points in 8 this year.
He got those points 3 times faster.
Right.
That's insane.
Well, and beyond that, by the way, let's go off of all this while we're at Travis Konechny is at 11 points through 8 games. Cam Atkinson's point per game right now. Sean Couturier is at 7 in 8. Joel Farabee and Bobby Brink are at 6 in 8. And Brink didn't even play every game. He missed one.
Right.
So Brink's got 6 and 7.
Yeah, Bobby Brink can listen. Can we talk about Bobby or Brink here for a minute?
Well, first of all, we need to anyway because we need congratulations to him as well for a first NHL goal.
Second.
Right. Long time coming because he looked like he was going to have his first about 4 other times already this season.
I'm a little bit surprised he didn't rip the monkey off the back celebration. Like it was getting there for him.
He kind of looked. It was cool though.
He looked relieved.
He looked at the crowd though and kind of gave a like, "Come on, let me hear it," kind of thing. Like it was. I mean, it was good. It was the emotion was very fitting for a first NHL goal, and then he had the second one, and you can see. Let's just wait. That, by the way, that's something special going on right there with what he's got going with Joel Farabee and Noah Cates on a line right now. That's something special going on. That is a line that everybody should be excited about every time they touch the ice.
I'm going to throw a bold one out there.
Sure.
Bobby Brink might be my next jersey.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, the number change helps a little bit because now that he's picked a number. Like, he's picked a number.
I wish I had an old Braden Chen jersey to repurpose.
That's fair. Well, no, but you need a new one somewhere along the way.
Yeah. I need the burnt orange, absolutely.
I mean, you see it. It's nice, you know.
It does look nice.
Although Saturday they were the alternates, and it was kind of like, oh, that's kind of a disappointment after all the other times we watched the other ones.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I mean, like, and like, Cates is finally coming along with some points and things like he's at 4, which again, 4 through 8 games is not bad.
No, not at all.
Clear, but he had a few games where the points were not coming, and it was like, this is not great. You know what I mean? Like, he's not producing offensively. He's probably, he's still playing well defensively, but, Owen Tippett was like that for a few games. Now he's up to 5 points in the last handful of games because he didn't have anything for a little while, and, that's kind of all I'm trying to get at.
It is interesting. We saw kind of in the first half of the season, kind of got the first half. It's only been 8 games. You know what I mean? The first several games, you kind of saw your top pairing produce, and as we get into the back half, you start seeing the depth produce, but we haven't seen the results. It's been, like I said, they've lost 3 out of their last 4. It's been interesting. It's a good thing, right? Seeing the depth guys kind of get going a little bit, but it has, for some reason, come at the expense of the product on the ice. So I don't know.
And it's going to a little bit.
Yeah.
Like here's the thing. So they play the game they did against Vancouver. Let's go. We can go back to the October stuff now because we can go back to talking about some of these results. They play the games they played the game against Vancouver. The game against Edmonton, by the way, same deal. They have a really strong game. Joel Farabee got it going in the first period, and then kind of just when you thought it was going to be kind of that competitive game because Cam Atkinson scored early in the second. It made it 2-0, and then most of the second period is gone, and right after a power play, here comes Zach Hyman scoring a goal. McDavid was out there to set it up. It was, you're going, okay, they're going to come around now.
Time to start playing a game. Yep.
Right, and they took a penalty not long after it, by the way. So it's like, here comes the power play too.
Yep.
And then
Sean Walker snipes
with a short-handed goal.
An absolute snipe.
Yes, and
you don't see that out of a defenseman very often.
Well, this also started a little bit of a trend for a couple of games because after this game was over, and by the way, Cam Atkinson scored another goal at the end or in the third period to put that game away. Great defensive game for them, by the way, to keep. Yeah, McDavid didn't have a shot in the game, by the way. I don't know if that was high.
No, the Oilers have been awful. The Oilers have been
ironically
awful.
Ironically, as we're sitting here recording this, they're actively playing in the Heritage Classic right now, and they are leading the game as we speak.
Against another team who's been awful.
The whole division's been awful, which I think is why people were a little
except for the
surprised
Kings.
Well, I think. Well, I hear you. Somebody's got to be good out of the division.
But the Kings are a wagon.
But somebody said something. I saw a tweet the other day or something like that about how the
and so is Vegas. Hello, sorry.
Well, sure. about how the Pacific Division also apparently has the 26th, 28th, 30th, and 32nd ranked teams or something like that.
Oh yeah, and Vegas
really bad.
Yeah. Well, and then all of a sudden, Vancouver. Where's Vancouver coming from, sitting at 5-2-1 through 8 games?
Well, you called that one. You thought they were going to be a playoff team.
And you know what? I will say, I'm going to take a lot of credit because Casey DeSmith has come in and been fantastic and has taken a lot of pressure off of Thatcher Demko.
Demko's obviously been good too. We can't ignore that.
Right, but how much better is he going to be not having to play 55, 60 games?
Oh yeah, I agree with that. Well, then it's just in general. It's right. Pedersen and Besser got off to great starts. Quinn Hughes is looking really
Brock Besser didn't go the first 22 games without a goal or whatever he did last season. Like we talked about some Flyers starting the season slow last year. So did Brock Besser.
Yeah.
Elias Pettersson did too. Like they had a historically bad season last year. Like all those guys had career bad years. They're not going to be bad 2 years in a row. There's just too much talent there.
Sure. Are we on to the beyond the Edmonton game? Are we on to the Dallas game where the shorthanded goal trend continued? Because
absolutely.
I mean, Travis Konechny had 2 of them by himself.
The Flyers have been shorthanded killers this season.
And then until Saturday.
Wow. Fair enough.
We'll get there, but this was the previous Saturday, and then so this was what was really impressive. Konechny had one earlier in the game that helped them tie the game up before the first period was over. Then they're down 2 goals in the third period, and they take a penalty right after Jamie Benn makes it 4-2 Dallas. And it's like, okay, that's probably the end of the game. That's it. They're going to lose this game. Because Benn scored with 9:24 left in the game.
Right.
2-goal game against Dallas, who was in the Western Conference Final last year.
And is a wagon.
With 9:24 to go, are you beating that team? You don't think you are.
No.
And then when you then to top it all off,
it would be pretty easy to roll over and die.
Well, the other part of the equation is also when you chop 2 minutes off of that and go, well, now you're killing a penalty.
Mm-hmm.
So what are the alternatives? You're either going to have 7.5 minutes to put something together and get 2 goals, or you're going to give up another goal and it'll be a 5-2 game. So whichever one it is, that's that is what it is. And then Konechny scores another shorthanded goal. And then 47 seconds later, Sean Walker scores another shorthanded goal. And then the game's tied, and it ends up going to overtime. They lose in overtime, of course, because overtime is still kind of a nightmare scenario for them. But
you know what? Honestly, going to the 3-on-3 overtime against Dallas, you don't expect to win that. You don't have anybody who can... outside of Sean Couturier and maybe Noah Cates, you don't have anybody who can play with Rope Hintz. You don't have anybody who can play with Jason Robertson. You don't have anybody who can play with Miro Heiskanen, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They just out-talent you, and that's fine. Sure. But the fact that you're willing to storm back and steal a point, obviously we're talking 8 games into the season about a team that's probably going to end up not being very good, but that's the kind of thing that I talk about from John Tortorella down. It's got to be about winning. And that team stormed back.
Belief.
Yes.
Because that's what Tortorella talked about after they beat, I guess it was after they beat Minnesota during this week.
Right.
Was that the room just has a lot of belief that they can do.
They can hang with any team.
That they can play. And
absolutely.
And that's going to be that's definitely a big deal as you go through the process and things like that. And really they played like that going through the game against Vegas too, because they had a 2-1 lead in the first period and they held it all the way until the final half period and half of the third period.
I will say that was one of those losses that was, I called it devastating in the chat. It wasn't, whatever, but it's a little,
I can tell you what you called it.
What did I call it?
You said it, what a choke job. And I'm like, it's not really a choke job against a team that just won the Stanley Cup.
But it feels like it when you're leading.
You wanted to see them. And you know what though? Here's the thing. I don't agree with it because I know that there's a lot more steps before they're on that level of that team.
Of course.
But John Tortorella would have agreed with you probably because John Tortorella's mind was Cam York tried to make a play he shouldn't make in that spot.
Right. Well, and
that leads to the puck being in the zone and that still being in the zone, and that's why you didn't clear it, and that's why you ended up on your heels again, and that kind of thing. So,
well, of course. And no coach is ever going to be happy with a mistake with 33 seconds left in the game that costs you a point.
Exactly.
Or costs you 2 points. No coach should ever be happy with that, no matter how bad your team is. I don't care if you're the 0-16 Detroit Lions. If you make a mistake with 30 seconds left that costs your team the points, the game, no one's going to be happy about that.
Now, like I was saying for a second, or like we said from the top of the show, because we didn't do a show last week because I was under the weather. And Tuesday was probably my worst day of it all. And now just picture, if you will, and I'm throwing this mention in very quickly because we're going to get off of it because we said we're not talking about it. After watching the Phillies bow out in the playoffs first, then having puck drop was 11:17 Eastern time for this game.
Yeah, it was tough. I know I've talked about my schedule before and the fact that it's an hour behind. It was a little tough even for me.
Right. Now,
man,
if I wasn't dealing with the cold that I had and how bad it was, I probably don't genuinely. I don't care because I'm probably still up at 1:30 in the morning
watching
anyway.
the game. Yeah.
Well, just in general, I've watched West Coast games regardless. And
That's fair.
It doesn't bother me that it's 1 o'clock in the morning.
But this wasn't even a West Coast game. Most of those start at 10 o'clock Eastern. This was an hour later than even that.
Sure.
Like, it was 9 o'clock local time. Poor.
Because they did that was for TV. It was
and I will admit,
TV spectacular, and it was a cool look. The concept was cool. There were some
Frozen Frenzy was great.
The network thing was great. Yeah, the additional channel, the very red zone like channel that they had going,
and it was their first iteration of it.
Oh no. This is when I say the execution was bad, I don't necessarily mean from the TV angle.
Okay.
What I do mean is that like
from the scheduling.
I think you can do better than a Tuesday night in in mid-October, early season in October.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like, when you really should have something like this?
Saturday night.
Well, not even necessarily has to be Saturday night. You could really...
Well, afternoon into the night.
Well, but you could position yourself really well to say, listen, we have 4 games we want to get on television. 1, 4, 7, 10 on a Saturday. 1 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 10 o'clock. That's your schedule for ESPN.
Right.
And the rest of the games, we're going to find a way to stagger in between those times. So what was that?
Every half hour.
What is that? No, yeah. So what is that? No. So what is that every? Well, I didn't mean every hour, like on the hour. I'm just saying like every.
No, I got you.
The hours in between those games, we have to figure out how to stagger the start.
Probably one game every half hour or so.
And you could still do it with like, hey, the last game of the night is still going to start at 10:30 at night Eastern time, which is not out of the ordinary for whatever West Coast team you want to pick.
No.
One area where I think they missed the mark on this was, if you wanted to have a game that started that late, I don't have any problem with it. Why did it have to be Vegas Flyers? And I'm not specifically making it to the Flyer standpoint. It's why did it have to be Vegas? It could have been Vegas, New Jersey. It could have been Vegas, Boston. It could have been Vegas, New York. I don't care. Why was it? Why did you do it when an East Coast team was in a West Coast market and bump it to the 11 p.m. Eastern time? Because
I don't disagree with that, but I will say that I think if you are going to start something at 9 o'clock local time,
right,
Vegas is just about the only city you can do that and get away with it with reasonable expectations. I'm talking about the live gate. I know you're talking about kind of the TV audience, but
right. Well, no, and because I'm trying to maximize it for everybody.
Right.
You want to start a game that late in Vegas? I'm I'm on board with that.
Do it when they're playing the Canucks.
Right. Why wasn't it a game where it's right in the time, in the same time zone as somebody else,
or even Western time? Yeah, that would be ideal. No, I know.
That's all I'm saying. It's that was the only issue. So when that game was winding down, and they lose it with 30 seconds left,
painful.
To avoid overtime, I was thanking everything.
See,
because I just didn't want to go through the possibility of another 5 minutes to potentially shootout. And we're really wrapping at 2 a.m.
I totally get that, but at the same time, at least overtime's fun and you get a point out of it. I was looking at it like, man, I really just watched this whole game just for them to come out of it just nothing, huh?
I guess I hear you. I hear you. And I look, once you get to that stage of the game too, yes, you would like to come away with something for.
And I'm just tired and want to go to bed. Like you took Vegas 59 minutes. Like you led Vegas for almost 59 and a half. Well, you know what I mean. You were in ahead of that game until the very, very, very end against, like you said, a team that made it to the Stanley Cup final last year.
They were the Stanley
team that
Cup.
Won the Stanley Cup. Like they're the team, man. Like. You don't need to beat them, and I know it was Scott Wedgwood. It was their backup, wasn't it? It wasn't Aiden Hill, was it?
Logan Thompson was.
It was Logan Thompson. Oh, they're splitting. It's fine. They're both the starter. It's fine. You stretched them to the limit. You took them to the end, and coming out of that with nothing is a little disappointing.
Yeah, I totally get that part of it. I just was not disappointed that the game was ending. Maybe 10 minutes earlier.
Fair enough.
So I could finish the story out and just be done with this thing. Because, look, from my standpoint, too, you know how weird it is to publish a story at 2 a.m.?
Fair.
For a live sporting event? Like, it's weird. Especially when, you're considering at that point that, I don't even know how many people knew the game was on. That's how, little...
People cared.
Well, because you were also you were on the same day as a Game 7 in the baseball playoffs.
Right.
And when that was over, how many people just were like, "I'm turning the TV off. I'm done for the night.
I'm going to bed." Yep.
Right. I mean, because that game ended right as puck drop happened, practically.
Yeah, it timed out nicely.
So that's all I'm saying. It's like at that point in time, who wanted to watch that anyway? So it was like, I mean, that game's kind of twofold for me then, because on one hand, I'm sitting here going, it doesn't get any coverage at all in terms of like,
oh no, like
anticipation for a game that starts at 11. But at the same time, the story might be one of the most read game recaps I do because nobody watched.
Fair enough.
Like, somebody's got to find out the next day what happened, or hey, the story's there. This happened. Okay.
All right. So after,
of course, you could also look and say, oh well, they lost. That's it.
And I think for a lot of people that is where they're at on the Flyers, and you know what? Fair enough. But after a quick little swing through the West, Dallas, Vegas, the Philadelphia Flyers returned home.
Yep. And
I will say, Nick Delorier welcomed them back with a bang. 2 seconds into the game, Flyers, Minnesota Wild, Patrick Maroon and Nick Delorier. Good old-fashioned, there's no predetermined fights in the NHL. They dropped the gloves right away, and just a nice little scrap. We love a good opening face-off scrap against two big, ugly mugs.
And here's the thing. I believe it was last season. These two teams had 4 fights in a period, right?
Yeah.
So, like, Delorier was part
There's
of
a little bit of heat there. Yeah.
Well, and I think the interesting part more than that was that it didn't carry over into anything further as the game went on. That was the only fight.
I think that was them going, all right, we had some beef. This is us settling the beef, and we're just going to play a normal game here. If things get fired up, then they'll get real fired up, but there's no reason to elevate things for no reason.
There really shouldn't have been much beef, though, either, because Maroon wasn't on the team last year.
Yeah, but they lost Reeves, and he kind of gets he gets tapped. He gets tapped as the guy, right? Like,
I know, and obviously this is like, forget it being premeditated at the face-off or whatever. It's probably something that you skate by the guy in warm-ups and go, hey, by the way, buddy, you want to go?
You might have texted him last night,
night before.
Hey, bud, eat a big lunch. We're going first thing tomorrow. Tell your coach to start you, like. Maroon strikes me as the I'm going to send a text type. Like, hey, or after morning skate, he texts them, eat a big lunch. I'm starting. See you there. I'm not saying it happened, but tell me you'd be surprised. You can't.
Well, anyway, by the way, this was a very, mostly fun game.
I was about to say, what happened after was a lot of fun.
Well, mostly fun, a little stretch of time where you thought, here it comes, they're going to find a way to blow this game. And then they put the foot back on the gas and finished it off.
Almost immediately, yeah.
Some really nice goals. I thought, obviously, the first one by Travis Konechny, who since then has 2 more, but this was his 6th of the season. Just a snipe job from the top of the circle. I don't feel bad saying this before October's even over. There's your all-star. There's your all-star.
And I mean, unless what you were talking about earlier, I mean, it probably doesn't happen until after the all-star game, but unless he's your trade bait, right? I mean,
I don't think they're interested though. Like, again, the problem with Konechny is that, like, well, you're right, because look, you can look to sell high, but the problem with Konechny right now, or the problem with the idea of trading him even within this season, unless it's directly at the deadline, is he's still got another full year left on the contract, and you have to find a way to make the money work. They can't just retain salary for the rest of the year. And then
if they do it at the deadline, it's pretty easy to eat salary for a year and 15 games.
I don't know, though. For them,
let's say he stays relatively hot and has 30 goals by mid-February, the trade deadline. End of February. Let's say he's at 30 and he's looking like he's going to score 40, maybe 45. And I know he started hot, but you get what I'm saying.
Right. Well, he's on pace for something good right now.
That's what I'm saying. Like, and I'm not throwing crazy numbers out there. I don't think here.
I think the way he's off to right now, he's going to top the 31 that he put up last year.
I think he might do it by the trade deadline. And if that's the case, man, you can get a ransom for him.
I still think that he's going to be the type of guy that you go after the season and then talk to people about, and you say, look at the most recent whole thing, and there's a lot of stuff to go to. But
he's a UFA when his deal's up, right?
Well, yes, he is.
Maybe you let him go and trust that he loves you enough to come back.
I don't know about that, and the only reason I say I don't know about that is because I think the players who are like him, who could be as good as they are, especially if you go to another team,
don't hit the market very often.
It's not even that they don't hit the market. I would wonder if he would become complete, like if he would just fall in love with the type of place he would go to where they're also winning. Like
fair enough.
Like, to me, him having this kind of success when the team is not good is what you have to make the decision of whether you want to keep or whether or not this is the ticket to something bigger.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like if you want to cash, like this is, you're either trying to sit on the lottery ticket and saying he's going to be part of the end solution of the process and we're keeping the lottery ticket no matter what.
Right.
Or I'm cashing in my lottery ticket because of the fact that he's already on track to surpass his career high in goals from a year ago. And obviously points would kind of come into play with that as well. And
like you kind of, as of right now, you have to pencil him in as the other winger on Mitchkov's line, right? In 3 years or whatever.
Sure, tentatively, and like here's the thing. Beyond that, what happens if you continue to grow this thing out where maybe he's not even the best winger that you have, and he becomes a second line guy, and he scores like that.
But at that point, does it make more sense to trade him while he's a first line guy?
Well, yes, that probably would.
Right. So and I'm not taking anything away from Travis Konechny. I love Travis Konechny.
It's by far the toughest decision.
Absolutely.
Because I think
absolutely
in the grand scheme of things, you can look at every other player, Sean Couturier and Travis Sanheim included, mind you, and take guys like that and say, listen, why would you not be, or why would you be comfortable? Let's just say it that way. Why would you be comfortable trading Couturier or Sanheim? Because of the contract length. Because if someone was willing to take from the contract length standpoint, where you're kind of going off of uncertainty of how they're going to hold up, how they're going to, be in 7 years,
right?
You're taking the uncertainty away of that.
That's fair.
You've got a guy right now, like in Konechny, who's got one full season left on his contract after the current season.
Yeah.
You have to make a decision on him. You don't get the luxury of letting it play out and then.
I agree.
Like that's the thing. If Konechny was the guy who had 6 years left on his contract, you're currently riding it out because you're going to go, hey, we signed him for that length of time, and he can be on the other side of the rebuild.
Because here's the thing: if you have to make this decision now, by now I mean by this trade deadline, because if he is on your team with intents on getting rid of him at next trade deadline. No, you're doing it wrong. Because all he's going to do in the meantime is score goals and help you win games.
Well, sure. The only amendment I make to that, and I know that this kind of goes a little against what you're saying because you're right. Like I get it, he's helping you win games, so you're right. It
makes no sense to trade him at next year's trade deadline.
No, it does not. To me, the decision needs to be made by the offseason. If he comes back for next season,
that is fair.
Then you have your answer. You're intent on keeping him. But,
right.
If you're intent on trying to get the most out of what you have and you think that you can maximize draft picks, maximize prospects, then I think you trade him in the offseason.
If Travis Konechny is on your team at the end of the first round of the draft next year, he's probably you might as well sign him. Like he's a lifer, which is fine. Yeah. Like Travis Konechny, I love Travis Konechny. I would be perfectly content, happy, thrilled to have Travis Konechny as a lifelong Flyer at this point. Like I have seen enough grit, tenacity, skill, ferocity, whatever terminology you want to use in his game to know that he is a Philadelphia Flyer. And if he is here for the rest of his career, I will be nothing less than thrilled.
The production helps, obviously.
Yeah.
Well, I'm saying because if you were a guy who plays like I think people are kind of like there's people who are looking at Scott Lawton's start to the year, let's just say, and going, if Danny Briere had what was said to be out there, then maybe you missed an opportunity.
So I will say the production is nice as far as Travis Konechny goes, but if there's ever a statue of him outside the Wells Fargo Center, it'll be him doing this.
Yeah, that's true.
the teeth thing, if you know what I'm talking about. Like, because that's just his personality, right? Like, you don't, I mean, unless he scores a Stanley Cup winning goal, knock on wood, the statue is a personality moment for him. You know what I mean? Like, that's just the kind of player he is.
Well, so anyway, beyond the Konechny goal, let's go to the rest of this game.
It was a lot of fun because
the second period they scored 2 power play goals, which, by the way, to that point in the season had been a foreign concept for this team. Really scoring on the power play.
What a shocker!
Sean Couturier,
the Flyers and not scoring on the power play. Name a more iconic duo.
So Sean Couturier first, and this was the goal that I was alluding to earlier, where this was a Sean Couturier goal. In the crease, kind of, had to win a little bit of a stick.
Just get it there.
Gets it there, and then scores the goal. Like, just it felt like a classic Couturier.
Vintage Sean Couturier. Yeah. Yep.
And then not too long after, we already brought him up, but Bobby Brink, the first one. And now, did he get lucky? You better believe he did, because that puck hit an official skate and went right through him. And he had a look right from the top of the slot and was looking at Philip Gustafson's 5-hole, not ready to be close it off, before it was going to go through.
And just snapped it home.
And then after that, by the way, the 3 goals in the third period they scored. Once the game was back close, it was 3-2. Owen Tippett. The play really was Cam Atkinson, by the way, because he creates a turnover, gets the puck ahead, and then Tippett on a break. Pushes
it to Tippett. Yep.
Great finish, by the way. Hope to see more of that soon, because that's the only one he's got so far this year.
You talked about Sean Couturier getting a nice clean breakaway as his first goal of the season. Tippett got a little bit of that too, and he didn't even have that 15 seconds to think about it. So he just instinct, baby. He gets in there, he fires it far side, I think, and just pretty.
He put a glove side off the post and in.
Yeah.
It was a good shot. And then Brink gets his second, which, by the way,
what a pass.
I know.
Joel Farabee just absolutely rifles it.
And I know he's not involved on this particular play, but this is what I was talking about with the Noah Cates, Joel Farabee, Bobby Brink line that's been together for a little while. See, that's a line that right now I'm not breaking up, and I don't care about the bad games against Anaheim and things like that. Like, I'm still not breaking up that line because they're generating. They look like they have really good chemistry. And then, oh, by the way, go to the next goal, the 6-2 goal, which
another first goal of the season.
We've already talked about Travis Sanheim a lot already, so I don't want to linger on
that. Is the goal we mentioned earlier.
Tyson Foerster looked like he had his first goal of the season on that.
Yep.
Puck rolled on him at the last second. It's on edge. It goes wide. But he stays with it, gets the puck back, makes a nice pass right to the slot, and which, by the way, to the slot where Travis Sanheim is just cutting right on through.
As he tends to do.
And then just lets it go and scores a goal. So it was a really clean play.
You can say what you want. You can say what you want about Sanheim defensively, but when it comes to contributing offensively, he's really good. He's a talented offensive defenseman.
He can be, and I hope that maybe the increased role is helping. Yeah. Now, here's the interesting part. We're talking about Saturday's game against Anaheim like it's a completely bad game. It wasn't really a completely... I mean, they scored a couple of goals later on that kind of helped turn that score around. So, yes, a little bit. It was a kind of awful game.
It was an ugly one. Yeah.
Hold on a minute here, because they got off to what felt like a pretty decent start, and they made 2 mistakes. The first was there was a turnover through the neutral zone that led to the rush the other way, and that's where Ryan Strome scored the first goal of the game.
Less than a minute in.
Yeah. And then you had a power play where you're trying to kill it off, and again, you're like, just one of these things. It was a bad, just kind of bad timing. You left a guy with time and space. It was on another kind of transitional entry, and Frank Vetrano scores. Right?
Yeah, it's the NHL. It's full of super talented players all over every roster, and sometimes Frank Vetrano beats you.
Yeah. Now, I have a complaint about this game that is a complete coaching decision, and I would have done something totally differently than what John Tortorella did.
Okay.
Sam Ersson started this game. That is not the mistake, by the way.
Okay.
I agree with the start there, because A, you have to find time to get Ersson in if you're going to have him be the backup. And B, Ersson played the Ducks twice last year and won both games and looked good doing it both times. So just for the history angle of it, too, this was not a bad game coming off of Carter Hart beating Minnesota, and Carter Hart pretty much, assuming we can pretty much definitely say at this point, getting the start against Carolina on Monday.
I certainly hope so.
Then if you're looking for a kind of a pocket to slide Sam Ersson into for a game, that might be it. Hey, it's Anaheim. The Pacific, we kind of alluded to it. The Pacific has been pretty terrible.
Would you say 28, 30, 31, 32, something like that in the league? Yeah, something ridiculous.
That was going into that day. I'm sure that Anaheim's not necessarily right there. Give Anaheim.
They just got 2 big points. That does a lot down there.
Well, they just got 4 big points because give Anaheim some credit. They were down 3-1 against Boston 2 nights.
Oh, yeah.
Back win. So that mattered. And then same thing. You had that happen, and then you had then they beat the Flyers. So, and the Flyers were not like coming in, like they were coming in obviously off of a good win themselves. So certainly nothing to like, that's no slouch of a win either.
Absolutely.
But either way, so this was a good pocket for Ersson to get a start. So I'm not worried about that. Here is what I do have a problem with though. Carter Hart was the backup on Saturday. After the first start that Ersson made, Felix Sandstrom was the backup, and they just gave Carter Hart the straight-up day off.
Right.
Why didn't they do that again?
Maybe
there's no good reason to answer it that way. Like you could have just sat there and said because Hart was going to be the guy who sat on the bench. Like to me, if Hart's sitting on the bench, he's in a position to be able to play in the game.
So maybe there's something to it. I don't know. Maybe this is part of the goalies are weird thing. Maybe there's something about the game day routine between the starter and the backup, and you want Carter and Sam Ersson to develop a little bit of that, camaraderie, bond, whatever you want to call it. Maybe. I don't know. Goalies are weird.
The only reason, I hear you. The only reason I don't understand is because you're carrying 3 goalies still. We're through the first month of the season. You're carrying 3 goalies still.
Right. Clearly, that's just what you've decided to do for now.
But you decided to do it for now because you don't want to put Sandstrom on waivers, which, and this is why I made the comment I did about what Tortorella said about Zamula. It's like, you do realize that because that's the whole reason you keep talking like that. You haven't really had to talk about the goalies, because you should have to face a decision for this. You should have to make a decision.
Sure.
And you haven't had to yet because a handful of injuries have helped and, whatever. But either way. So if you're carrying 3 goalies, you may as well use them and just give Carter Hart days off so that you have the ability to, when this game goes to 4-0 after a goal that
you can make the switch.
The goal should never be allowed. The first one.
Fair.
Gets it to 3-0 because nobody even sees it go in. Apparently, the only person who saw it go in was the guy on the ice. Was Frank Vetrano.
Right.
That's it. Everybody else didn't see it. And then not long after, Adam Henrique scores 2. And I just thought that was the moment that you pull him.
Fair enough.
Clearly, he doesn't have it today. The team doesn't seem to have it. And then, oh, by the way, right after that, they scored 2 goals really quickly. And by the way, guess who? Cam Atkinson, Travis Konechny.
Right.
A theme here.
Sure, but if you pull your goalie, maybe the momentum change, completes and they actually do come back. You never know, but you don't.
They do or do not. They still got those goals in that spot. It's just what I don't like is when the third period rolled around, like this is, and it's where I disagree. I agree with Tortorella because Tortorella talked about the third period after their game was kind of really out of reach. The fans who were there were giving Sam Ersson Bronx cheers.
Yeah.
On anything that was mildly a save. Right. And there was a lot of grumbling about that in terms of that's ridiculous, all that kind of stuff. And Tortorella obviously addressed it afterwards too.
Of course.
In only the way that John Tortorella can. That's how I'll say that.
Yes.
But I kind of have to criticize Tortorella for not for saying that it's ridiculous, but for not having kind of a prevention mechanism on the bench is what I'm saying. If it was in your head that no matter what, Carter Hart's not playing today.
Right.
Then put Sandstrom out there, and at least if when the game gets out of hand, if something happens, then Sandstrom gets a chance to play.
Right. Well, and a lot of rosters don't have that luxury, but you do, so use it. Especially.
Well, and what value what value does Sandstrom bring if he's not doing anything? He literally watched every single game except for the one that he got to take warm-ups in.
Right, and and at a certain point, make a decision with him. Either play him. Trade him,
waive him,
or try to trade him if you can.
Probably are. I wouldn't be shocked if they are. But I bet you there's nobody biting on that one, and then they don't want to lose him for
and
nothing.
they're not playing him, and like maybe you're not playing him because you don't want him to get hurt, but like you're not showing other teams what he can do. Like
it doesn't make any sense to me. But either way, it's beside the point at this point. It's just that was my problem with it. And then as the game got more and more out of hand, which by the way, Trevor Zegras scores in a power play. It was directly off of a turnover. They were trying to get out of the zone too quickly to get a shorthanded rush. Turnover happens. Now it's a 4-on-2 the other way. Of course, you give a guy like that time and space, he'll score. They came right. By the way, they called the timeout after that. Not immediately after the timeout, they came down and scored again, so it was 6-2. Konechny scored again on a power play to make it 6-3. They got a power play right after that was kind of like, interestingly enough, that was like, hey, maybe they'll get another one to come back or whatever. And instead, they gave up a shorthanded goal to Vetrano, hat trick complete.
Yeah.
And then Farabee scored with 3 minutes even left to finish it off.
To make it look better, I guess.
and here's the thing. I don't mind the part where Joel Farabee gets his fourth goal of the year. Konechny continues to score goals. Like, they can.
Those are good things.
They can be good things. What I disagree with is that as the game got out of hand, there's no reason why Ersson has to wear that whole game. Because if you go look, like, go just out of curiosity, and I'll pull it out. I'll pull it up, but go out of curiosity and just see what Sam Ersson's numbers are this year.
Oh, I can't imagine they're very good.
Because let's put it this way: the goals against I'll give you because you could probably deduct it pretty quickly anyway. He gave up 5 against Dallas and then 7 against Anaheim.
Fair enough.
And the only thing that is saving him from what the average of those two numbers is the fact that the Dallas game went overtime, so the time on ice increases and brings it down just a hair to 5.91 instead of 6.
Yeah, and then but the save percentage at 760 is just unacceptably bad.
Right. And I'm not like, believe it or not, at some point in time you actually kind of look smart for keeping Sandstrom a little bit because
now you get to send Erstrom down and let him go play.
They're not going to. But again,
they probably should.
But there's another argument against Tortorella, isn't there?
Fair.
Why is that not on a level playing field? You seem to have no problem talking about sending defensemen up and down like yo-yos. You know, you don't seem to have any problem worrying, with the way.
But you said this guy's stuck, and now you're stuck with him. Like, what? Change your mind, John.
You're stuck with him. You've got another guy who's sitting here playing, who you can't move, and then you've got a guy who you've tried to use twice, and he's at a 5.91 goals against and a 760 save percentage.
And then
go down.
And then in the meantime, you have a guy who Carter Hart is playing very well this year. You know, he's looking like essentially what we expect Carter Hart to look like at this point, which is, I don't know if I'm overstepping here, but roughly speaking, a top 10-ish goalie in the world. Maybe a little bit outside that, but somewhere in that range. He is very, very good. I'll say that.
Well, here's a fair way to do it. Where do you think Carter Hart ranks in goals against average this year? He's got a 2.18. Where do you think that ranks? That's early in the year, so some of these numbers are really
7th.
It's not. He's lower than 7th.
Okay,
but 7th place is kind of ridiculous if I'm being honest. But
okay,
no, but 10th.
Okay, fair enough.
10th is solid, and in fairness,
top 10-ish.
Okay, but here's another reason why it's fair. Carter Hart has played out of the 8 games, 6 of them, right? The 2 goalies that are above and below him, 9th and 11th, are both of Vegas's goalies, who we know are spending time.
Right. By the way, the Stanley Cup winner.
Well, right. No, 2nd and 7th place in the league in goals against average are both Boston goalies.
Okay. Teams that were until very recently undefeated.
Right. Even in this case, Joseph Wall has a 1.33 for Toronto. He's 3rd in the league. He didn't start the year as the starter per se.
No.
Kind of now, right now, it's kind of a back and forth hybrid.
And he's still not officially their starter.
How about this one? Semyon Varlamov's at 1.51. Isn't Sorokin the starter though?
Yep. So allegedly, you would think.
But these are always a bad look in the beginning of the year because of the fact that it's hard to determine what they're qualifying. Like, everybody's got kind of the same amount of playing time, so everybody qualifies for what the league leaders list would look like until you get into the part where somebody's finally played 15, 20.
Right. We are still a little early and
played 5.
Yeah, we are still a little light on the sampling sizes at this point.
Sure. Like in the same sense, Carter Hart's save percentage is 13th in the league, but you're also behind, you're behind again. Both Vegas guys are, I think, just one is actually. I'm sorry, so just one. Both Boston guys.
Probably both Boston guys. Yep.
But and here's another thing though too to consider. Carter Hart might be 13th, but you're also behind. You're behind Vejmelka for Arizona, who probably sees a shot volume that's out of this world. You know what I mean? Or Jake Allen in Montreal, who also is probably seeing a lot of shots. How about again, here's a good one. How about Thatcher Demko, who only allowed 2 goals on 42 shots when you played him and has a .936 save percentage? I wonder why, because if they give up a lot of shots and he makes a lot of saves.
Yeah, they do.
You're going to be there. It's not like you're talking about a guy who may not see as many shots and just keeps having really good, moments or whatever. So it'll even out, but you can look at the numbers and say, listen, if that's around what he averages, a little more than 2 in goals against,
no problem.
924 save percentage, even if it's 920, 919, 917, you're in good shape. That's good.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's really good. That's something to build around. Now, granted, I don't know if people are. I feel like people are watching him a little differently this year, to be honest.
Of course.
Like
there's a cloud.
Well, the obvious elephant in the room as a part of it, but also just in general, because I think people are also watching him a little differently because
the contract situation.
Well, because of the conversation we've already had involving Travis Konechny or involving some of these other guys.
And I've been saying it on this show for 18 months. He's too good. He's winning you too many games. And
it's the problem is that they I don't think that when it comes down to it, they can look past the fact that he's his age.
I agree. And I am starting to come around on that. So when we talked about this kind of last summer in the abstract, not this past summer, but last summer in the abstract when the team was just kind of terrible, it was a lot of, okay, but who's going to be here in 5 years when we rebuild? Who's going to be here in 8 years when we rebuild? Who's going to be here like way down the line? Fast forward a year, Matvei Michkov changes things.
Sure it does. Well,
3 years.
Yeah, well, there's another angle to it as well, because yes, Michkov changes things because of the potential, because of everything that you're seeing so far, and because of the fact that, like you just brought up, there's a little bit of a set timeline with him, because it's not the same unpredictable nature as some of these other
most rebuilds.
But think about something else and ignore Michkov for 1 second. See what Cutter Gauthier is doing in college right now?
Yep.
That's even shorter term.
Oh, sure.
That's end of the year material at this point. Cutter Gauthier is on track, by the way, and I wouldn't be shocked at this at all, but the way that he's playing at the pace that he's playing currently.
Is he winning the Hobie Baker?
Right, that feels like I was going to say at least that feels like a Hobie Baker nomination.
Fair enough.
Because he's playing that well. That's number one. Have you happened to check out some of the stuff going on in the OHL?
I've seen a little bit.
Have you seen how the London Knights look?
Turns out the London Knights are good.
Yeah, but do you know who some of their best players are?
I think I have some ideas.
Yeah.
Does one of their names rhyme with Kronk?
Rhyme with Kronk. Yes, one of them does rhyme with Kronk.
And the other rhymes with Larky?
Yeah. You're not wrong. So I'll pull up Oliver Bonk's numbers first, really.
Okay.
Because Bonk's at a position that's kind of like going to be the most under the microscope because they really haven't crafted.
I'll pull up Barkey then.
Barkey's, I can't wait for it. I'll pull him up anyway for myself. I was just starting. So Oliver Bonk does not have a goal yet this season in the OHL.
Okay.
But he's got 10 assists in 12 games.
Pretty good.
Which is pretty solid stuff. He is also, I'm trying to get this on because I'm doing this one on my phone. He's a +3 for penalty minutes so far.
Okay. Denver Barkey.
Denver Barkey, go ahead.
Denver Barkey also has 4 penalty minutes.
Okay, but that's not what I'm worried about right now.
Oh, I know. He is a +8. Mm-hmm. Okay, so
I know he is.
He's played 12 games, 7 goals, 16 points. Now, we've talked about this a lot in the past, and this is what you expect from high draft talent in their draft +1 season. This is what you expect, right? You're playing against 15 and 16-year-olds. Like, you should dominate, especially on a wagon like London. But it's still nice to see. It's still nice to see him contributing to a team that is very likely looking to make a run at the Memorial Cup. It's nice to see.
Sure. It's nice to see. So Denver Barkey, by the way, now there's a lot of guys who have played a handful, like a couple more games than he has. Not many, but the league leader in points. And by the way, it's pretty obvious based on the fact that they have the top 4-point guys in the OHL right now. Kitchener's pretty damn good also.
Okay.
The Kitchener Rangers are pretty damn good. But the league leader in points right now has 25, of which 20 of them are assists, by the way. But,
stupid.
But Barkey's at 16, and at least, not terribly low on the list. Let's put it this way. Technically, it ranks him at 15th, but 2 guys in front of him are tied. So he's in a tie for 13th.
Okay.
Not horrific at all, obviously.
Not at all.
That's pretty good stuff. Goal-wise.
For a guy who's not even getting top-line minutes, right? Isn't he on their second line?
He might be. I don't know. I haven't paid super close attention. But
I think he's playing on their second line. So that's some pretty good production right there.
I do also want to add, by the way, because 7 goals, by the way, he's not even leading his own team in goals.
Right.
So there's somebody else who's in front of him. But again, for a guy who was 3rd-round pick, is very undersized, looks like he's 12 years old, all that type of stuff. But you're starting to see why he got a preseason game. Why he got an extended look throughout camp and things like that.
He's probably going to go to the AHL for a year, I would imagine, probably next year. But you never know.
Could be.
It depends on where the team's at.
He's got 2 years of eligibility left.
He does. He can go back to juniors again next year. Okay.
Yeah, so he might go back to juniors even again and try to.
And then come straight back up. Yeah, that's fair.
Well, see, that's okay, and that's a fair thing to also look at too in terms of another factor with this is that some of these guys who put up 20 some odd points in that short a period of time
are 20 years old or 21.
Right. They could be 20 probably, and they could
20.
be +2 is what we're
yeah.
They could be draft +2 guys.
And you're just beating up on freshmen in high school at that point. It's like, come on.
Exactly. So last couple of things, I guess, before we get ready to get out of here soon.
Yeah.
First of all, we didn't really talk about this yet, so we should, because Rasmus Ristolainen has yet to play a game this season.
Right. We did talk briefly about the lack of defensemen, and this is a big part of that. So what's going on here? The headline is what's going on with Rasmus Ristolainen, and what is?
Because nobody seems to know the answer. What is going on is he hasn't played a game yet. What is going on is that he is still on IR. What is also going on is that this is following a timeline that people are very familiar with when it comes to the Philadelphia Flyers. Which
sounds a little Ryan Ellis-y.
A little bit more Cam Atkinson last year kind of thing because of the fact that it was. Yeah, he might even play in the first game of the year. Oh, okay, he's not going to play in the first game of the year or first couple, but that's okay. He'll be ready. Home opener's probably on the table.
So I do just want to remind you that Cam Atkinson ended up not playing last season.
I know. So just hold on. Then it turned into there was a lot of belief that we actually said it on the show because I said Anthony Sanfilippo had something on it that Andrae was going down,
right,
and Ristolainen was going to be the next guy up,
right.
He was going to come off of IR and he was going to play probably. Eventually, it turned into he was going to play Saturday against Dallas. The Saturday against Dallas, I should say. So that was a week ago. Then earlier this week, it was, oh no, he he had a setback, so now we have no timetable. So isn't that how it typically goes? That he'll play the first game of the season possibly. No, maybe not that one. Maybe the next one. No, wait, he's he's coming back on the fifth for the 5th one. Nope, now he's.
Yep. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, won't get fooled again.
By the way, once it got
I'll believe it when I say it.
Yeah, by the way, once they got to a point where Andrae wasn't going to play at the NHL level anymore, the call-ups were interesting. Because now I don't want to look. Torts can't be blamed for this completely because, as much as as much as we've been saying the stuff about play the kids, land of opportunity, all that kind of stuff that kept being said and things like that. When they call somebody up from the minors, Tortorella consults, actually, it's Danny Briere who consults with Ian LaPerriere and the staff down there with the Phantoms and kind of gets a feel for who's good to call up. We really want to do this, or
here's what we need. Who you got? Right.
So what they came back with was they called up Victor Mete and Louis Belpedio. Your favorite.
Oh, Louis. Good old Louis.
Who played the first 2 games, by the way. Belpedio got the go over Mete.
Yes.
And there was a big kind of thing about why not Addard, why not Ginning?
Maybe Louis Belpedio is my next jersey.
Listen, it's not necessarily a weird thing in preseason, I guess, because everybody's kind of floating around and there's numbers all over the place and things like that. But legit game where there's 6 guys out there and they're actually on the roster, like with consistency. You don't see many guys running around with 37, especially on the blue line anymore, do you?
No, that's fair.
Number 37 on the blue line was interesting. But
trivia question: when was Louis Belpedio drafted?
They actually said this the other day because he was drafted by Minnesota.
Okay.
I believe they said he was a 3rd-round pick.
Okay. In what year?
Oh, in what year? Is he in the 15?
14.
Okay, it was around that time.
Yeah, but he's 27 years old. So we love seeing a good little underdog story.
I mean, yes. Look, yes and no, because again, there's a lot of people that are going to sit there and say what happened to the kids. But I do think
before he got to Philadelphia, he had 4 NHL games.
True.
Come on.
I hear you.
Come on.
Yeah, but again, you're thinking about it.
I know.
It's because it's a big picture approach. It's, I don't know what that's solving or anything like that. So it's a little,
I know, but if you've been listening to this show long enough, you know I love my fringe lineup, guys. Shout out Hayden Hodgson. How you doing, buddy?
I hear you. Either way, you get the point, and so we'll see how long that lasts too. I don't know. I mean, yeah, it just is what it is.
It's fair.
I'm not going to be like I don't know how many weeks of this season I'll be able to do this.
Right. Well, and
where we're just pounding about the lineups all the time or whatever.
Of course. And as far as Ristolainen goes, we don't really know anything, and at this point, until we know something, I'll believe it when I say them. I don't.
No, there's
say,
no reason,
say yeah.
There is what it is. All right.
He's Ryan Ellis.
Off to the schedule for the week, by the way. We already hinted to the fact that they play Carolina on Monday. Carolina, by the way, has been a really interesting team.
Because they've been pretty bad.
Well, they've been banged up a little bit. Like, they just got Svechnikov back. They just, they've had a couple other guys who've kind of been in and out a little bit, things like that. They've kind of gotten it back in the right direction because I think at one point, they've won their last 2 games. That brings them to 5-4. They're in 3rd place in the division. Nobody's running away with the Metro right now. That kind of helps too.
Right.
So they're an interesting team. We got the home and home with Buffalo on here as well. Buffalo, also an interesting team.
Buffalo has been good.
Good and bad at the same time, though. Like the record has been bad. Lately, the results have gotten a little better. They're kind of coming back around on it. Speaking to Sunday specifically, by the way, they handily beat Colorado.
Yeah, they did.
Which is a pretty big deal. They've kind of had some things not go their way either. Devin Levi's been out with an injury.
Yeah, that's unfortunate for them.
So that's kind of the guy that you think is going to be the goalie of the future for them.
Yeah, but at the same time, don't put all your hopes on a 21, however old he is, 21, 22-year-old kid who
I hear you.
Is hurt, right? And I know Ugo Pekkalukanen's there. He shut out the Avalanche on Sunday. He is a guy who they have looked at as their goalie of the future in the past. So if he shows up and plays well, I don't think they're going to be upset about it. But yeah, they were leaning on Levi, and having him, be out of the lineup is going to be a problem.
And then, by the way, you close out the week against one of those good Pacific Division teams, the LA Kings,
who are they're looking like they're ready to go. They're looking like they're ready to hit the ground running.
Right.
And couple teams are going to chew up the Pacific. And I know we've talked about the Pacific being a division of haves and have-nots. And you have Vegas, LA, ... Edmonton, and then everyone else. But those teams at the bottom really are pretty terrible.
Right. Now, Edmonton, by the way, I can say it with certainty. They're about to win the Heritage Classic. So
okay.
That'll move them up a little bit. They'll actually be on the verge of passing Calgary in the standings. Actually, I think they might with that one.
Well, and Connor McDavid returned tonight, so
Yes,
that obviously bolsters your chances.
Sure it does. And
I will wonder now if he was rushed back for the Heritage Classic.
probably a little bit. I don't feel like I saw him as much as I could have, just because it was, an easing back in. I think they wanted him there more just for the presence of it. And that but either way,
and you certainly understand that.
But this is a good week to see kind of again what kind of team this is, because Carolina's tough. Buffalo can play the Flyers tough, despite being behind them in the standings right now and kind of on the upswing. And
by the way, McDavid played 23 minutes, second most out of forwards. So he was out there. Yep. Draisaitl played 25 and a half, but other than that, it was McDavid.
Well, I did see a lot of power play time for what it's worth. So maybe that's an easy way to ease him back in, because he's not trying to speed through the neutral zone. You just stand there and be skilled.
Yeah, and like I mentioned earlier, Calgary's friggin' terrible too. So
yeah, they are. Either way, so we'll see. This could be a good week to see kind of how this goes. Hopefully another good week of developmental type numbers from certain guys, and we'll see how it goes. But certainly a step, not I'm gonna say step in the right direction, but kind of a good way to start this thing off. So
yeah, it'll be a fun week, and we'll be back next week to talk about more.
2 weeks.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. 2 weeks. We will be off next week. I am coming back to the area for a friend's wedding, but I am doing it so quickly that we will not have time to throw a show together. So we will be back in 2 weeks. That will be November 12th.
Yes.
We will be back November 12th with a new episode. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you hit the notification button, it'll send you if you hit the bell, it'll send you a notification when the episode goes live, so you can check it out right away. Subscribe to us there. Hit the like button. Hit us on all our social medias. We're at YWT Podcast everywhere. We are also on sportstalkphilly.com. Follow Kevin on all the socials at Kevin_Durso. Follow Sports Talk Philly at Sports Talk PHL. There you go. And the ticker at the bottom of the screen there reminded me. So that'll do it for us this week. We will be back, like I said, in 2 more weeks. And until then, we'll see you.